When the catkins start appearing, you know that spring is very nearly sprung. And don't these look beautiful? This is the golden alder, and it's a great little tree for a small garden. And it has the considerable advantage that it'll grow almost anywhere, even in really wet soil. I've just been clearing out an old heather bed in another part of the garden, but instead of throwing the plants away, I want to save some of them to plant in the sunnier parts of my woodland here. Now, the trouble is that when heathers get old and straggly, they get really horrible, as you can see. But not to worry, there is a way of saving them. And what you do is to dig a hole quite deep, and then you bunch the plants up like that, put it in the hole, and then just refill with soil. Now, those stems will actually root in, and that plant will grow away very happily and give some very welcome winter colour. And we've got plenty more of it later on in today's programme too, when Gay Search visits Cambridge Botanic Gardens. Stephen Lacey, in the last of his visits to Ireland, finds a garden where the plants have to put up with a real battering from salt spray and winter gales. But first, we remember last summer, when Ray visited a fabulous garden in Devon.
Every season has its flush of flowers, and every gardener has the problem of bridging the gap between spring and summer blossoms. Even experienced gardeners are waiting for things to happen at this time of year. Many of the spring flowers are over, and here in South Devon, Ray Hubbard of Hill House Nursery believes things could be different. How do you decide where to put the plants in your garden?
Well, one thing, it's mostly experience. You know, I've made a few mistakes in my time. You've got to think about really not necessarily where it's going to look at its best. Where is it going to survive? Where it's got its best chance.
Now, you've got a lot of sun lovers here. I noticed the rock roses from the Mediterranean. They seem to thrive in all this heat.
Yeah, they do, because they get the reflection from the path and from the wall when we do get sun, actually. And the thing is, it's very well drained, so this can be a problem in the summer when it needs some water. But at least in the winter, it's well drained. We don't lose things here for being too wet. And this year we did have 2 months of continual rain early in the year.
Well, one plant I'm surprised to see on the southeast wall is the Rosa Banksii. I mean, it's a superb specimen.
Yes, that's been flowering now for a couple of weeks. In actual fact, it's not as tender as some of the books or experts make out it to be. It's been there 30 or 40 years, and it's put up with some pretty awful weather in those 30 or 40 years.
When would you actually prune it?
Well, that's another problem with Rosa Banksii. Because it's a very early rose, it flowers on last year's wood. So if people buy a Banksii, I always say if you prune it like an ordinary rose, you're going to get no flowers next year. So what you want to do is do a bit of pruning this year and a bit more next year, and so on and so on. Take probably 3 years to just cut it back, not have a hack at it.
Right. Well, I've also noticed there's a few surprises here. You've got the Algoranthemum Jamaican primrose. Has that been outside all winter?
No, that's actually cheating. We've grown that on and put it there. You've really got to do this with the Argyrenthums, even in this part of the country.
So you would recommend starting at the beginning of the season with new plants?
Well, it's so easy, Argyrenthums, all the Argyrenthums, to take cuttings from. So you just take a few cuttings, July, August, and take them through the winter. By all means, leave it there, because it may come through the winter. It may do, and it may not.
Could you recommend one really hardy shrub that would do for anybody in the country?
Viburnum Mauricii. Now this, Nick, is one of the best. It's hardy anywhere, and as you can see for yourself, it's got this marvellous habit of layering itself just like a wedding cake. Absolutely fantastic. It's growing here in shade, or dapple shade anyway, and it lights up the whole area, just as if it's lit.
And any preference to soil?
No, I don't think it's at all fussy. No, I think you get away with this almost anywhere.
Now, there's a man after my own heart. The great secret of success with plants, he says, is to put them where they're going to really thrive, and I couldn't agree more. Quite apart from anything else, if a plant is growing really well, it makes the gardener feel really good. Well, I've just finished planting my fruit, and I hope that's going to thrive here in my new kitchen garden. There's not a lot of room in most modern gardens for much of an orchard, but if you grow the trees in formal trained shapes, it's surprising how much you can get in. I grow my apples, for example, as stepovers. Now, these are single-tier espaliers, about 30 centimetres high, and they just have this one single branch growing either side, and they really will crop extremely well. Now, the plants can be put in about 2 metres, that's 6 feet apart, and that means that in this quite small area I've managed to get 6 plants. So I've been able to choose varieties that will pollinate each other and that will give me apples right through from August until well into the new year. Now, they're trained against these wires, and the first thing to do is to put a cane on the wires and train the plants on those just to stop the bark chafing into the metal. Now, in order to look ship-shape and pretty, which of course is the idea of this garden, the wires must be strained tight. So I've put them on angle iron posts, and notice that on the end posts I've put in a strut, so it's just to stop the posts pulling into each other. And that means that I can put an eye bolt on the end and strain those wires really tight. But with fan-trained trees, it's a little bit different. The posts for these have to be 6 feet out of the ground. And I just felt that if I was to put a strut in there, it would look heavy and industrial and ugly. So instead of that, I got our local blacksmith to weld a bit of thread into the ends of these pieces of tube. And that can then go on the top there, and those, of course, will hold the posts apart, and so I can strain my wires tight. Now, you need 3 horizontal wires, and to those you wire these canes in a perfect fan shape, and then you plant your tree up against them. Now, you can buy ready trained trees, and this is the perfect way of growing plums and cherries. They're normally quite big trees, but this way the pruning will keep them small, they look really attractive, and they do crop extremely well. Now, you can also control the growth of these trees, and I'll show you how. If you pull a branch down and grow it horizontally like that, it'll grow quite slowly. Whereas if you train it vertically, it'll grow quite fast. So in the early years of training, you take those bottom branches and grow them vertically, and when they've grown thick enough, you can then pull them down to the bottom like that and grow them horizontally. Now, I also grow my pears in an ornamental way. I'm growing these in the form of an arch, and this is just a standard tubular metal arch which you can buy quite cheaply. You want to buy the trees as 1-year-olds or maidens. Now, they come probably just as a straight stick like that, and they don't look very much, but believe me, it is much better to buy them like this. They'll get away quicker, they'll fruit much earlier in their lives than older trees. Now, they might have some side shoots on, and if they do, then they need pruning. And you just cut them back to leave them about 3 inches long, cutting just above a bud. Now, the other thing to bear in mind when you're planting any fruit tree is that they're all budded or grafted onto a special rootstock, and that rootstock controls the growth of the tree. So you must make sure that the point where the variety is budded onto the rootstock is well above the ground, and it's really quite easy to see.
Lots of us are inclined to put our gardens into hibernation in November and not really venture out there again much before the first daffodils in early spring. But a stroll through these stunning winter colour borders at the Cambridge Botanic Garden make you realise just what treats you're missing. It has to be said that winter colour is more subtle than the brassy yellows and pinks of spring, the whole rainbow of summer colours, and the glowing reds and golds of autumn. And while there are flowers at this time of year, they don't take the starring role. It's the supporting cast that takes centre stage. Berries, if the birds leave them alone, foliage, the shape of a plant, and of course, bark. I mean, just look at this, isn't it beautiful? This is a variety of silver birch from China, and it has these wonderful, light, bright white stems, and you can imagine they'd lighten up the garden on even the dullest winter day. But when you look closely, it's not just white, there's all sorts of colours in here. Pale tan, pale gold, pink, and the fact that the bark's peeling in places just makes it even more attractive. This specimen's about 20 years old, and because it has such an open, airy habit when it's in leaf, it's a lovely tree for a small garden. Some of the maples are very good small garden trees as well, like the paperbark maple, Acer griseum, which has this lovely cinnamon-coloured bark that flakes off in the winter, and when you get the low winter sun shining through it, it really does warm up the garden. If you haven't got room for a tree in your garden, then there are some lovely shrubs to give you colourful bark all through the winter. Some of the willows, for example, like Salix vitulina britsensis, which glows like a bonfire, lovely shrub. And then there are the dogwoods, of course, with their greeny gold and bright sealing wax red stems. They're really good shrubs for a small garden because in order to get this bright bark, you need to cut them back hard every spring so they never get too big. And if you choose one that has attractive leaves later on in the year, like Cornus alba elegantissima with lovely pale cream and green foliage, then you've got a shrub that gives you good value right through the year. One of the things that makes gardens look so bleak in the winter is acres and acres of bare soil. And what I love about the planting here is the way they've used ground cover. There are wonderful billowing drifts of euonymus, the pale variegated silver queen, which is the perfect foil for the red of the dogwoods. And although the soil's slightly limey here, some heathers do very well. Things like this Erica crossdaliensis Ghost Hills, for instance, and the Erica carnea Myoton ruby. Ivy will scramble along just as happily as it'll climb up, so that makes very useful evergreen ground cover. And so do hellebores, like this one, the unfortunately named stinking hellebore, with its dark, leathery leaves and pale apple-green flower buds. Prostrate conifers are worth thinking about too, although this magnificent beast, this is Juniperus virginiana grey owl, would fill a small garden all by itself, and yet you still see it on sale in garden centres under dwarf conifers. Evergreen foliage gives structure to the garden all through the year, but it's particularly valuable in the winter. After all, green is a colour too. And they've used it in just about the right proportions here. They've used lovely architectural evergreens like the mahonias with their great walls of jagged leaves that take on a lovely warm reddish tinge once the frost's been at them. And then, of course, there are the conifers, not just evergreens, but everblues, evergreys, and evergolds. This is a golden Lawson cypress, Winston Churchill, and it really is a glowing beacon luring people into the garden. Much too big for the average garden, of course, but you could get a similar effect with a golden thuya or even a golden Irish yew. As I said, the flowers in the winter garden tend not to be the stars of the show, although these aconites are doing a pretty good job at scene stealing. On the whole, flowers in winter are small and insignificant, until you get close, that is. And when you do get up close, you're often rewarded with a whiff of the most delicious perfume. Oh, that's lovely. It's sweet but not sickly. This is a member of the honeysuckle family, Lonicera purpusii. And the usual advice with these scented winter flowering shrubs is to plant them by the house so you can really enjoy the perfume. The problem with that is they tend to be pretty big, and once they're in leaf, pretty boring to look at too. Much better to plant them in an out-of-the-way corner of the garden, then in winter, cut a few branches, bring them indoors and enjoy the perfume in the warm. while few of us have got enough room in the garden to plant for winter interest on the scale of the Cambridge Botanic Garden, you can certainly adapt the principles to even the smallest space, or even to a container. Some bright bark, a few architectural evergreens, a little bit of ground cover with the ivy. And just a few daffs to remind us that spring really is on the way. And you've got a really nice feature to brighten up the corner of any patio.
So if you want to cheer yourself up, that really is a great garden to visit at this time of the year, or any time, come to that. And I do reckon that we gardeners need a bit of a shot in the arm right now. But because spring flowers are so small, in my view, you really need to concentrate them all together to make an early spring garden. That's just what I've been doing, and I've been down to the garden centre to see what I could find. Right at the front of the border here, I'm planting the scented shrubs, including my all-time favourites, the Daphne, the Mezereon. That will really assault the nose as you walk past with a superb perfume. And behind that, the purple buds of Skimmia rubella, which will eventually open out into white flowers. But at this time of the year, it's really the bulbs that are making the best show. And there are plenty of these available in pots. Things like Iris reticulata, which is what I'm planting now, and the crocuses, and cyclamen, and scillas. They're all looking wonderful. But do bear in mind that some of these might have been forced along a little bit in a cold frame or a tunnel. So if a really hard frost is threatened, just keep a little bit of this stuff, horticultural fleece, about, just to cover them up to protect the flowers. Now, I've also been thinning out a big patch of snowdrops in my little spinney, and they look fabulous. Now, a lot of people feel that the only time to move snowdrops is just as they finish flowering. But in fact, I've found that you can move them at more or less any time, provided they've got a bit of foliage on, and you take a fair-sized root ball with them. And you also need to plant them as soon as you possibly can after lifting, and they'll get away very well. And of course come up year after year. It's amazing actually what plants will put up with, as Stephen Lacey discovered when he visited a lovely garden on the west coast of Ireland.
We're right on the Atlantic seaboard this week, near Bantry in the southwest corner of Ireland, visiting Mary Walsh, who's exchanged a garden in Cork for this, a completely different kettle of fish.
Mary, you had this house for a long time as a holiday home, didn't you?
We did. We have this house about 15 years now, and we just used it for weekends and that. And about 3 years ago we came here to live, and then I started gardening.
Well, I'm not surprised you chose here for retirement. It's a fantastic spot, isn't it? It's lovely being right so close to the sea.
It is. It's really beautiful. Kilcrahan is a beautiful area, and it's lovely being this close to the sea. Like, there's so many lovely feel about it.
Yeah. What was the garden like when you came?
Well, it was mostly grass, and the back was all rocks. It was just briars and bracken and montbretia and stuff like that.
You can see the rough areas all around. Imagine what it was like.
It was really rough. Wind is a very strong element, of course, and then it's salt laden a lot of the time. So there's a lot of things that can't grow.
So the first thing is to erect some sort of barricade, is it?
Yeah, a bit of a shelter belt.
What sort of plants do you use for that?
Well, I used the Senecio. It was very good. It seems to be quite hardy. And it's lovely as well. It looks well. And the O'Leary Macrodonta then is great. It's as hardy as old nails, you know, and it'll take anything. And you can grow what you like behind it, you know. And in the wintertime, the tide comes right up, you know, and we get a lot of sea spray, a lot of salt spray, and it does coat the shrubs, and the eucalyptus gets quite crinkly and burnt with it, and lots of the shrubs do, but they recover then. They recover quite well.
Most things seem to recover from that.
They do recover quite well. It's trial and error now with me, And I will try, I'll experiment with different ones just to see will they grow. And I've been amazed at what does grow. It's very temperate here, you know, it's a few degrees more temperate than Cork is. And so I can leave things out, you know, I can leave gazanias out all year, and that makes an awful difference. They come in several colours, like the orange and the yellow and the double yellow and the paler yellow. So they really like it here as well.
They've made good large-sized mats.
They do.
They?
They really make themselves at home.
Yeah. Well, there's a whole range of tender things around the garden. I've seen the bottle brush there.
Yes, the bottle brush is very really naturalises. Yeah.
I even see you're trying an agave now.
Yes, and it seems very much at home.
Yeah, not going to be too wet for it.
Well, I might plant it a bit more on its side, I think, for the winter, so that the water will come off it.
Yeah.
You know, because there was going to be a lot of rain like there was last year, and I just have to protect it a small bit that way.
I mean, some plants here are so happy they've sort of naturalised, haven't they? You see these fantastic fuchsia hedges. And
oh, the fuchsias are great. Well, they're completely at home here, yeah. They're part of the natural landscape, really, and they love it here.
Crocosmas, you also see in great sheets of orange.
Yes, yeah.
Below the hedges.
Yeah, and they're really dramatic, you know, when you're coming along even the roadways, you know, to see the big sheets of orange. They look lovely.
And you've allowed them in the garden too?
I have. I kept a bit in just to keep the natural tone in, you know.
What I like about the garden, although you've introduced all these exotics, it still sits in snugly, doesn't it, into the landscape. The curves of the lawn follow the curves of the sea, and you've used driftwood around the garden as a theme.
Yes, it's nice to bring in, like, to be part of the sea as well. Like, that's my water feature out there.
Well, it's been a great visit, thanks very much. And for me, I've been brought up by the sea, and coming somewhere like this just makes me not want to go home.
Why don't you say so?
There's more practical advice and inspirational ideas on the way next here on UK TV Gardens as we head into the ever-popular gardener's world. So stay with us.